let's get in the weeds a little bit. I know I was reading where you had called 2025 a roller coaster. What's the biggest change in consumer behavior you found this year so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just continue to surprise us. When we started this year, everyone was sure it was going to be a down year and sales were going to be down. And at least in terms of beauty industry, like everything just is continuing to grow. I think that's almost the surprise is like the resilience of consumers. The other big thing, which I've been talking about for a few years now, is this, especially in beauty, the shift to online, right? We're almost at 50% of beauty personal care sales happening online, right? A lot of this is from due to Amazon, a lot of this is due to TikTok Shop, but it's creating a lot of ripple effects in our whole industry. When people are shopping online first, it's really letting indie brands grow, right? You no longer have to be part of a conglomerate in order to get that shelf space, right? People are finding you online. It's letting brands from other countries break in. We see these K beauty, skincare products. We see these Middle Eastern perfumes absolutely blowing up on TikTok shops. So it's really like lowered the barrier to entry in a lot of ways, which is really exciting. It's given consumers a lot of choice. So I think that's probably the biggest overarching trend that we're going to continue to watch is this e-commerce transition.
Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Minutes with Mike. I'm Mike Ryan, the Chief Networking Officer over here at PIMS. And with me today is Anna Mayo. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course, everybody who's watching this knows Anna. Anna is the VP of Beauty at Nielsen IQ, and we're so excited to have her. You know, when I was prepping for the show, of course, I was doing all my homework on things that you had posted and things you had said and all this cool stuff that you've been doing. And it's vast. Like, I had about 10 sheets of paper. I had to condense it to like 6 pieces of paper. And then I'm like, can't ask that. Okay, I'll ask this. And actually, I do want to ask that. So there's a lot to get to here. But I definitely want to start out with this. So I don't know if I told you, but my son is a sophomore in college at St. John Fisher Upstate New York, and he's majoring in data analytics, right? So what I think used to be called statistics, he was always kind of really good with numbers. I like to think that he's got the little gift of gab too. So I always tell him about Nielsen IQ and specifically you, and I show him clips and stuff, and I'm like, this is kind of like the world you're getting into. And as I was saying it to myself, I'm like, I'm curious how she got into that world, right? Because it's a new world, kind of a new world. How did it start with you? How did your journey go to get to where you are then
Yeah,
to
well,
here?
that sounds like a very cool major, and you should definitely connect us so we can talk because I had no idea that this type of
I'm definitely going to hit you up for an internship for sure.
of course, yeah. No, I think that's cool because I never knew this type of job existed really until I guess I was in it. But yeah, I mean, I think we're in a world where there's so much data, right? It's just multiplying all the time, and like data's great, but you need to know what to do with it, right? You need to know how to interpret it. You need to know what it means. You need to know what's useful, what's not useful. So I think that that's really cool that they're kind of learning about that at a college level right now. But yeah, how did I get into this? I mean, I had a little bit of like a meandering path in college. I was just telling you, we just got back from Greece. Like I kind of all I wanted to do in college was travel. So I majored in international relations, and I just kind of had fun, and I studied like politics and history and just whatever I was interested in. By the end, I sort of figured out I wanted to do something in business. So I kind of minored in business, but it was like all very vague. And then I graduated and I just started kind of taking whatever jobs I could find. I sort of identified that I wanted to be in like the marketing space. So I had a few I worked in media buying for a little bit. I worked for a company called Millward Brown in like survey research. And then I decided to go back to school at night and get my MBA. So I was doing that. My goal was to be a brand manager. I thought that would be really fun to be in charge of a brand. Actually, one of my good friends was working at Nielsen and was like, "Oh, you should come work with me because this is like a great stepping stone to be a brand manager," right? And like a lot of people kind of take this job and then they become a brand manager. So it's like perfect. So I took the job and I worked with a lot of brand managers. And I kind of realized that I liked what I was doing more than what their job was. I sort of figured out that the best part of their job was like working with the data and the numbers and figuring out what it means and doing strategy and planning. And that was all the stuff that I got to do every day. So in a bit of ways, I kind of fell into it, but I think I was following a lot of signals of where my interest was and not being afraid to kind of change jobs and move around and kind of start over in those early phases of the career.
It is one thing to be able to master the skill of knowledge of knowing what it is that you are. We're all selling a service or a capability, and it comes across from people that are responsible for sales, for information, that they know what they talk about, that they what they speak of is something that they not only understand but can speak it in such a way that those of us who don't understand can understand. That's one thing. You've got that nailed. But what is equally, if not more impressive, is public speaking is so difficult. Public speaking in a group is even more difficult. And public speaking in a group with your peers has got to be one of the scariest things that any human being can do. Like, I get nervous getting on a podcast with me and you. I get nervous, when more than three people are in my office. And I've done my share of panel discussions and such. But you are so front facing. And, I don't remember the last time I went to an event where I didn't see you as either part of a panel or hosting a panel, or I saw a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn and different social media sites where you're posting stuff. How did that all come about? Like, and were you always comfortable in front of an audience like that? How do you shake away those cobwebs? Talk a little bit about that whole public speaking.
Yeah, I think as I've just moved on in my career and been around more, like I think the secret about public speaking is pretty much everyone that's doing it is terrified and hates it. Like I think this myth of the natural public speaker really I do know a few people who like genuinely love being on stage and they could just talk to a wall, but like it is few and far between. So I think it's good for people to know is that most people I've talked to CEOs who are on public who speak all the time, and they've told me they have like panic attacks almost every time before they get on stage. So, I mean, I'm definitely not having panic attacks, but of course I get nervous every time, and it's not a natural thing for me at all. But it's been a ton of hard work. I mean, if you told me in high school that I'd be on stage speaking in front of people, like I never, in high school and college, I used to do everything possible to avoid speaking in front of people, right? But when I started working, like one of my first jobs, I was an analyst, right, at a market research company. And so like, my job was to like prepare the presentations that my boss would then present. And I knew all the numbers, like I had to check all the data. I knew the story, I knew it in and out. And then I would hear them present it. And I would just thinking to myself, like, I could do a better job. I know this better than them. And that's kind of where it came from. And then, as I got a little more tenure, they would offer for me to present. And in my head, I was always like, no, I don't want to present, but I would make myself say yes. And then I would sit in my car and I would print out the whole presentation and I would practice it over. And this was for like a 10-minute thing. And I just did this for years over and over again. And then I did in my MBA program, same thing. I would write the entire script, like practice it over and over again until I knew it. And I mean, honestly, I do come back to that a lot when I have big presentations. I'll write out a whole script. Doesn't mean I'm going to actually read it when I'm on stage, but it helps me figure out what I want to say. It helps me organize my thoughts. I don't do that every time, but I've gotten a lot better at ad-libbing and kind of, just being spontaneous. But yeah, it's a lot of preparation. I think that's what people don't realize, right? Like it's years and years of just doing it over and over again. It's years and years of just being presenting to two clients, right? and then you grow and you get more and you get more comfortable. It also helps to really be an expert in what you're talking about, right? Like I'm looking at this data all the time. I'm reading about this industry. I'm talking to people. So I do feel like I have a wide knowledge breadth of what I'm actually talking about. And so there's a lot to pull on, right?
Good point. And I know everybody always says this about whatever industry they're in, whenever they're in it. They always say, "Oh, it's so ever changing. It's it's a new industry. It's a young industry." But with us, it truly is. I mean, it's reinventing itself as we go along. And each coming year or at each quarter that passes, I feel like something new's popping up, or a client's reaching out to us, asking us, what do we have in mind for this or that type of innovation. Let's get in the weeds a little bit. I know I was reading where you had called 2025 a roller coaster. What's the biggest change in consumer behavior you found this year so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just continue to surprise us. When we started this year, everyone was sure it was going to be a down year and sales were going to be down. And at least in terms of beauty industry, like everything just is continuing to grow. People are finding ways to spend money. That's been a priority. So I think that's almost the surprise is like the resilience of consumers, their willingness to keep spending and keep finding a way to kind of justify purchases. The other big thing, which I've been talking about for a few years now, is this, especially in beauty, the shift to online, right? We're almost at 50% of beauty personal care sales happening online, right? A lot of this is from due to Amazon, a lot of this is due to TikTok Shop, but it's creating a lot of ripple effects in our whole industry. When people are shopping online first, it's really letting indie brands grow, right? You no longer have to be part of a conglomerate in order to get that shelf space, right? People are finding you online. It's letting brands from other countries break in. We see these K beauty skincare products. We see these Middle Eastern perfumes absolutely blowing up on TikTok shops. So it's really like lowered the barrier to entry in a lot of ways, which is really exciting. It's given consumers a lot of choice. So I think that's probably the biggest overarching trend that we're going to continue to watch is this e-commerce transition.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions about that TikTok shop, but I'll get into that in a bit. I wanted to you kind of segue nicely into what I wanted to ask you about tariffs and the economic uncertainty of where we stand right now. Politically aside, how is it affecting the business or the culture of business, especially with the tariffs going up? Every day you read about this country is getting this percentage, that country's getting that percentage. How is it coming across in your information?
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of kind of panic about the tariffs and a lot of people kind of finagling their supply chains and trying to figure out how to import things inexpensively. To be honest, we haven't really seen it come across that much in terms of pricing. Like we haven't seen this huge increase in prices to consumers. Haven't seen a lot of products kind of been missing at shelves. So I'd say the impact has been less than we'd expect. I mean, of course, this isn't over yet, right? It's going to continue to compound year over year, but halfway, a little more than halfway through 2025, it hasn't been, the big impacts that maybe we were expecting in the beginning of the year.
What about things like, I was also reading you had done a breakout of Prime Day 2025. I know this year was a 4-day event and happened right around it was right after the 4th of July. How do you think, that's tying in with consumer behavior too? I know, I'm not a big shopper. My wife is. She's obsessed with the whole Prime Day, and I kind of just jump in because I need a couple things that it's quick and it's easy. But like overall, in the beauty industry, like how is that affecting things?
Yeah. Prime Day was huge for beauty this year. So sales were up 214%, going from 2 days to four. So massive. I mean, there's certainly the impact of people kind of waiting for the sale. There's a little bit people being kind of trained to wait, but it is overall growing purchases, right? It is helping to grow purchases for all of beauty. I'd say probably the bigger impact is it's taking away sales from other retailers, right? So people are saying, I'm going to buy this on Amazon, I'm going to buy it on Prime Day, and I'm going to maybe skip another retailer's sale. We're also seeing other retailers respond with sales kind of at that same time frame, right? So it's not just Amazon that's having a sale. Maybe, Ulta's having one at the same time, and Nordstrom, Walmart. So it's getting a lot more competitive in terms of deals. But yeah, I mean, the shift to Amazon's been really interesting. It is still does tend to be more like of the mass brands that people are buying on Amazon. And it does tend to be things that are like replenished over and over again. So think like Dove body wash, CeraVe moisturizer, sunscreen, like brands you're familiar with and repeat purchasing. It's been less about discovery and less about prestige or premium brands happening on Amazon. But I think you'll start to see those types of purchases grow as people get more comfortable with the Amazon experience. But it's still not the best place for discovery, right? You kind of have to know what you're looking for or have a link, because that endless shelf gets really overwhelming for searching and browsing. So places like TikTok Shop, places like Sephora, Ulta do a lot better job at curating and introducing new products to consumers.
I'm going to ask you about it in your break. Did you see any clear winners in the, with the brands and the product types you mentioned? But what about categories themselves? I'm hearing a lot about different categories kind of rising up too. Did you see any strength in any new categories?
So overall in 2025, we're still seeing fragrance as a really strong category. So the growth rate is in the 30% that we've been seeing in the past 2 years, but I think it's still like 15% or so. So definitely still remains a destination category. We are seeing a lot of growth in the fragrance mists. So moving from cologne and perfume to those lighter mists, but there's still this behavior about layering and collecting and different scents for different occasions, especially among Gen Z. I don't think we expected that category to stay at those really elevated growth rates, but it's remained really important. The other interesting one that's doing really well this year is body care. So the different types of lotions. We've spent so much time thinking about our facial skincare routines and all the products and all the ingredients. And we're really seeing people extend that to the rest of their bodies. So looking for things like hyaluronic acid or retinol or niacinamide in their body creams as well. We're also seeing a lot of growth in scented body care, right? So people are bringing that idea, that love for scent, into other aspects. So that's been interesting. And then the other thing that's exciting to see is cosmetics doing better this year than it had been in 2024. So it was good to see a rebound for cosmetics.
Regarding omni-channel, you had mentioned it briefly on an earlier question. Are you seeing more synergy between physical retail, uh, digital discovery? Is that growing or is it shrinking? What do you see there?
I think the physical retail is just getting more diverse, especially when you look at, we've seen just the distribution of beauty getting so much stronger. You can buy these anywhere. I always joke, like, we'll know that beauty is saturated when we start to see it at Home Depot. So um, I'm waiting for that because I feel like it'll happen in the next few years. But there's these retailers like TJ Maxx and Marshalls, Five Below, who have really made big bets in this category, and they're doing a lot of curation, right? And it's still that treasure hunt feeling. So I think those are the types of retailers that are doing really well in a physical store, and really it's something you can't recreate online, right? You're able to actually like searching through stuff and touching and feeling and getting a great deal. So I think there's a lot of excitement there. And then, I think it's interesting to watch the department stores kind of figure out how to recreate their experience to bring customers back, because we know there's been a lot of slowness in those types of retailers over the past few years. And then, with Sephora and Ulta, there's a lot of experimentation there with, Ulta's done really well expanding out into non-core beauty categories. So things like body care, shower, sun care. They're seeing a lot of growth there. So kind of expanding what they mean for people.
The habits of the different age demographics, right? Like younger consumers differ in their discovery habits than older demographics, right? When I was a kid, there was different makeup for my grandmother than there was for my mother, than there was for my sister. It was just, that's grandma stuff, that's little kid stuff, that's, for your mom. Nowadays, it's kind of blurred, probably on purpose, where you could see somebody who's 70 wearing something that somebody who's 17 wears, and it's more brand specific, or there's more of an engagement with the brand itself, and they're different hues versus this is the type of makeup I use. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that whole age demographic, what that's showing.
Yeah. It's funny. I can't tell you how many moms who have tweens are, just when I find out what I do, they're like, oh my gosh, my daughter, she's always making me go to Sephora. I don't know what any of the stuff that she's buying. And then I'm like, I know what it is. I can tell you. There's so many moms who they bring their daughter over, like, you have to meet Anna. This is the job you need to have. So um, it's kind of fun. So, I mean, they know a lot. It's starting very young. I was just talking to a mom whose daughter is 8 or 9, and she's already wearing makeup to school, right? I mean, they're starting really young, but they're learning about how to take care of their skin, which I think is a really positive thing. I think some other great things are that they're using sunscreen, right? Religiously. They want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves as they get older. But yeah, I mean, there is always, like, I'd say 10 or so brands that get mentioned by those younger consumers, and then they have no idea anything else. It's like there's 10 brands. But yeah, I think even on the older end, like, we're seeing among boomer consumers, the two brands that come to mind, Laura Geller and then Jones Road, they've done a really, really strong job of positioning themselves as, this is for mature skin, and this makeup works really well as you get older. And their sales have both been exploding over the past few years. So there's opportunity everywhere. We're definitely seeing that brands that can really specialize and be like for a niche group tends to serve them really well in the long run, instead of trying to be, this era of being a brand for everybody is kind of over, I think, in the beauty space. So it's like really specializing on certain things. And we definitely tend to see brands doing well among certain groups. And it's less likely that you're doing well across all different ages, because where people are shopping is different. Their routines are different. It's the brands that are talking to them can be really varied.
Talk to me about indie brands. Like, what can they do to sort of stand out in such a large marketplace?
Yeah. Well, we've been reporting on indie brands, and we had just updated some of our data, and I wasn't sure if, with all the tariff and pricing actions that we were expecting this year, how indie brands would continue to perform, but they are still outperforming conglomerates and by a large margin. So there's a lot of interest in indie brands, and people really see them as leading the way in terms of innovation, right? Like, a lot of the new ideas and new types of products are coming from indie brands. We often see the trends starting there, and then the conglomerates are kind of like fast following. But people have just become a lot more comfortable with trying a brand that they hadn't heard of before, and it's no longer taboo. You see this demonstrated really strongly on TikTok Shop, right? There's a brand like Anua who comes in from Korea, and suddenly they've done $70 million of sales, and no one had heard of it a year before, right? So that kind of barrier from like awareness to that barrier of needing to be aware of something before you purchase has really lowered for people. And I think there's still possible we could see a swing back to conglomerates, especially with all this pricing action potentially still coming, right? I think they'll be able to better weather the storm and keep prices potentially a little bit lower. But the other reality of the situation is there's just so many indie brands, right? And we all see these ones that grow and kind of have astronomical growth out of nowhere, and I think we all forget a little bit how many don't make it, right? You just were at Cosmoprof, I can't remember if you were there, but there's thousands of brands on the floor, right? And how many of them actually end up making it? So it's a fun industry to be in. It's competitive, but it's also kind of easy to get into, easy to sell direct to consumers. So you do see a lot of brands entering, which gives us this amazing benefit of all this innovation and all of these new products. And then hopefully see the winners kind of rise to the top and stick around, or and get acquired, maybe, right?
That's the goal. I wanted to ask you, we were talking about awareness, mental health and how that ties into it. And, community has become such a strong word in our world, certainly our marketplace. But, you read about things like on LinkedIn, like kindness. The word kindness gets tossed around a lot, and mental health, and making sure that, people are whole all around, right? How do you think that sort of transcribes into integrating emotional, physical well-being into like a brand's message?
Yeah, this is a good topic. I was just working on something where we were thinking about mental health and what it means. And like, there's certainly a mental health crisis in this country, right? People are not feeling good. They're also spending way too much time alone on their phones, not interacting with people. So I think it's challenging. I think there's things that brands can do, right? And certainly lots of brands are thinking about how to incorporate like calming routines into their products. I think Nutrafol comes to mind. When you subscribe to their vitamins, you get a subscription to Headspace for the meditation apps. I think things like that are really unique, but like it's a bit of a double-edged sword for us, right? Because I think really what's causing it or what's making it worse is all the time we're spending online, right? And all the time we're not spending physically. So it's a hard thing for a beauty brand to tackle and to solve. And certainly there's huge benefits and lots of entertainment and fun from social. But I mean, I do think as people we need to take care of that part of ourselves, make sure we have strong friendships and families, and definitely make sure we're getting out of the house a little bit. I don't know if that's a helpful answer to your question, but as I've been thinking about it more, I mean, I think there's only so much that a brand is really going to be able to solve our mental health crisis, right?
Brand loyalty is really tied to the feeling it gives you when you use it. And help or love. I'm a fan of Stitch Fix. I think I talked to you about this in the past, right? So my kids make fun of me, my wife makes fun of me, but I have brand loyalty. The shirt
And
I'm
you always
wearing,
look great.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. But like anybody that asks me, I'm like, I'll tell you about Stitch Fix. Like they should be paying me for the amount of
Yeah,
advertising.
you need a code.
But they give me the warm fuzzies. I don't have to shop. They send it to me. They're very personalized. It's not like the consumer outreach that PIMS does with a very personalized feel to it. But people tie that stuff into it. We talked about social selling, and certainly excited to hear about your version of TikTok Shop. So Home Shopping Network and QVC and TikTok Shop are changing that landscape. Social selling is really evolving as we grow, as your company grows and mine grows, so does this world of TikTok Shop. What does the successful product launch look like on your end, using TikTok Shop as an example?
We actually put together a innovation report every year. So we look back at the past year, all of the new launches, and which ones did the best. And we kind of try to pull out the key themes and highlight some of the winners. So I would say, just to give you some benchmarks, $50 million of sales a year, maybe we see one or two of those, right? For an individual brand, that's really high. I think the other, to be successful, you're probably looking at like maybe 10 to $20 million of sales in your first year would be considered a good one, all the way down to like 3. But again, there's maybe like 60 to 100 launches that big in a year. So the majority of launches are not reaching that size, right? And then it's these real unicorns that we talk about, like Latafa fragrances or Anua, that just absolutely blow up on TikTok Shop. I would say that one of the really interesting things that I've been watching closely is a lot of brands are launching first on TikTok Shop now. So if they have a new innovation, it maybe in the past it would be like, we're getting this to Target or to Walmart or to Sephora. It's going to TikTok first now, right? And that's where it's getting the attention. So that's been a huge shift. Or on Amazon. We're seeing a little bit of it on Amazon, but the whole way this is happening is totally changed. And, it's about partnering with creators in a really strong and creative way. I think it's about letting creators have kind of free reign what they say about your product and brand, not putting too many constraints on them. And of course, having great referral programs so that they want to talk about your brands. But yeah, I mean, there's a wealth of creators. I mean, as you know, TikTok Shop, right? There's an endless supply of who to gift to. The other thing a lot of people are talking about now, which I know you're very up to date, is making sure that the gifts stand out, right? Because these creators are getting so many. And so how do you make sure they talk about you? I always love your stories about your custom fridges or your custom surfboards or, whatever you do. But that's becoming more necessary, right? In a sea of endless products, getting the attention of creators is probably going to be one of the new tricks of the marketing trade book.
What used to be considered white glove because it was above board, then the expectations, there was a certain amount of personalization that goes on, but usually not multiple levels of it. If you got a shirt, maybe you're lucky enough you get the right size. But now you have size, you have shade matching, apparel sizing, you have handwritten note cards, all this personalization that goes into it. But as to your point, it almost is expected now. If you're going to separate, if it's going to be a differentiator, those types of things are expected. You think you think the consumers trust social platforms more today than they did a year ago, or do you think it's starting to wane as far as like the trust of like you mentioned it, and it's true. People will just go on TikTok shops, or brands will launch directly to TikTok shop. Do you think they're banking on the fact that the folks that are shopping there are trusting the platform itself?
TikTok Shop is very trusted. So we went last time we surveyed consumers, I think 85% of them who had shopped on TikTok Shop said that they trusted what they bought. They really enjoyed the experience. They are coming back. So we know that they're trusting it. I think a little bit of a side, but I was reading something the other day about a survey among middle school or high school students what they want to be when they grow up, and the top answers were like YouTuber, TikToker, podcaster. Like this is what people are aspiring to. But on the other end, like when we are seeing when we talk to, we have a long running consumer survey called Consumer Life that's been fielding for like 50 years, and they ask different questions, so we're able to track things over time. But people are definitely getting more suspicious of social media. They are trusting it less. They are aware that there's false information out there. They are aware that it's hard to tell, what's real and what's not. So there is definitely more skepticism coming in. I think people are recognizing that the more time you spend online, the maybe worse your mental health gets. So it feels like there's like two things that are true, right? Like everyone wants the success that comes from being, a social star, and they want all the benefits. But if you ask them to back away from that, I think they're realizing that it might not be all positive, and that there's probably some changes that have to be made. I mean, who's responsible for making those changes? That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
I have been surprised by the how strongly K beauty has really surged back in the US. I think that's been interesting to watch. I think it's a really interesting case. I mean, we've been talking a lot today, but it's an interesting case study in the power of TikTok Shop, and the ability of brands to break through. I think it also is a bit of an acknowledgement of the quality of those products and the amount of innovation coming out of Korea. But yeah, so I think that's been an interesting to watch. Gen Alpha is kind of fun to watch, and seeing how they're really getting into skincare at such a young age. And I think also, the celebrity beauty, continued boom of celebrity beauty has been really interesting. Seems like there's like 100 celebrity lines now, and then just more keep getting launched. So that's, I'm kind of wondering when it's going to end, but it doesn't seem like it is. And we are still seeing growth there. So that's been surprising as well.
What's next for Nielsen? What event will I see you at next?
September is going to be very busy, I'm sure for you too, but I'll be at Makeup in New York, which I always love. We're doing a report with Spate about K beauty and how K beauty brands have leveraged TikTok Shop. So I think it's 9:30 on Thursday.
Cool.
That's a great event. I think that their education sessions are like some of the best. I always learn a lot from those. We'll be at the CEW. We'll be at the Mid-Year State of Beauty, talking about how beauty has trended through that first half of the year, and the Perfect Core AI event I'll be at.
Anna Mayo, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, all your feedback. You're wonderful as always. And if you haven't had a chance to hear her speak, definitely go to one of these events that she just mentioned, or certainly reach out to her on LinkedIn. She's great. The company itself is wonderful. So thank you again, Anna.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Always good to chat.